attended many classes of Morse teaching, where we're trying to work with people's fists and help them to resolve their fists, and where we're listening to other people send and listening to recorded QSOs, or joining in these round tables in the classes where people are taking turns going back and forth. And in the process of doing that, we go through, well, what kind of things, what kind of mistakes are people making? And it turns out that the same mistakes keep coming up over and over and over and over and over again. There are sets of things that people tend to be, if they're going to make mistakes, this is the kind of thing they need to go back and look at. Well, the funniest part is that I think that most of those things actually are on that list that I did 1.5 years ago in the talk. They all kind of tend to wind up with each other and connect to each other. So I think that that's probably as good a place to start as any. What I want to do now is I'm going to share a screen, which I think is a PowerPoint screen, if I remember. Let me see if this is it here. And the first thing that I like to talk about, or I think it's important to talk about, is the difference between an expert and a novice, or an expert and a beginner. And that is that an expert tends to know what's not important. Beginners in particular walk into ham radio and they listen to podcasts and they read magazines and they see all this, and there are just thousands of suggestions about how to do things. And the problem is they don't have any basis of making comparisons. Whereas an expert, somebody who's knowledgeable in the field, walks in, looks at it, and he knows what he or she can safely ignore, and it falls away from a matter of thing. The expert knows what's not important, and by so doing actually knows what is important. And for an expert in any tool, and certainly a Morse key is a tool, but in the expert use of any tool, the tool disappears. And the person stops thinking about the tools. My favorite example of that is the carpenter who is using a hammer. And if the carpenter is thinking about his hammer, he is going to hit his hands instead of the nails that he wishes to hit. You can't think about the hammer when you're hammering in nails. The tool must disappear in the hand of an expert, so that intention is driving in nails, and it's direct intention to nail, intention to nail. And that's certainly what the expert condition is. That the real bottom line is what is important, eternally important, is you. The most important component in any system is what's going on inside your brain. And that's probably the first thing that I think is very crucial that people know. The second thing you're going to discover here is that Morse is an extension of your language system. You already know 2 alphabets, and those alphabets are the written ABCs, these symbols in which we squiggle out little things that make letters, and the vocal ones, A, B, C. That's a different A, B, C vocal is a different alphabet than that written one of squiggles. Well, you're going to be adding a 3rd alphabet of rhythms, because Morse characters are rhythms, and this is the basic thing you're going to be learning. This is just a graphic representation of all the alphabet. These are the 26 letters of the alphabet shown as their rhythmic sets. And it shows that each of the letters is a separate rhythm package that comes together. And as we do know, and this is one of the things you'll hear about as well, is that all of those rhythms are aligned with something called the dit train. The dit train is Morse code's beat. It's the beat, dit, 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 going on in the back of your head that represents dit, dit, dit. If constant dits were being set, dit, 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 dit. That's the time track. There's this time track against which Morse rhythms are played out. And everything in Morse works against the time track. And the whole design of Morse code is such that it all fits in relationship to the time track in this really easy 2-to-1 ratio. You don't have to think about this chart that I'm putting up right now very much. We'll get to it. So on the introduction to the straight key, the first topic that we come up to is the key doesn't matter. And that is the first thing that I wanted to tell this group of people at the show, and that was, with all the keys I've got, and there's a picture of them, but instead of showing you the picture, I'm going to switch now and see if I can go to And these things range from, this is a copy of Vail's key from 1845, and this is a C.W. Morse key that costs $39, I think, complete. And this is a J38, and this is a Chinese key, and this is a Frattini $500 showpiece, masterpiece, another J38. And I've got all these keys sitting here on the desk, and I can send on any of them. The key isn't what makes the code. This is on that old Vail key. This is the Vail key from 1844. That's Morse code on a very, very old key, and I promise you that those who can copy code would know that that sounded okay. And that's just on this old thing. And here's this $39 key. I said, next time try this. This little $39 key is one of my favorites. It's actually a lot of fun to send on. And so it goes. I can send on this. I can send on the Frattini. The point of that demonstration isn't, look how good I am. The point is that the code isn't coming from the key. That's not the source of these Morse dits and das. The code is coming from over here. Whoops, there I am behind my stuff. The code is coming from me. The code is coming from in my brain. I'm the one who goes da-da-da-dit, da-da-da-da, and makes a code rhythm and sends it out of my head. And it just happens to come down and intersect on these keys, so that when I get to the keys, I can go between keys. Whoops, that one's not hooked up. This one isn't even held down, but I can still, still can send on it. It's not the key, it's me, or in this case, it's going to be you. And that's probably the first and most important thing, is to understand that when you're learning to use the key, is that the key isn't what's going to make you good or make your code good or make your code bad. That's not how that works. It comes from a different place inside you. Okay, so now if I go back to sharing that screen, which I think I can do probably. All right, so as I was saying, the key doesn't matter. It's not the key that makes the code. It's me. And that's the first little bit of lesson. Now the second thing I want to talk about is the location of the key. This is something that you beginners are going to run into all the time. There are all these different, they call them styles of sending. American, European, and what I call modern American. And there's differences between these. And the differences add up to ergonomic choices that can be made. I'll give you an example here. Whoops. I'm going to pull up, I've got another J38 sitting over here, and I'm going to put it all the way back on my desk over here, back at the very, very back, and I'm going to pull some of these other pieces out of the way, so make myself a little path so I can get up here, and I'm going to put that key all the way back there, and this is called the American technique, where my elbow is supported on the desk, the forearm is supported to whatever degree it's there, and my hand is reaching out to a key which is back on the desk, away from the edge of the desk. And in the standard American technique, people are taught to turn their key flat. And this is celebrated in various movies. This is a famous naval training film, excellent training film, in fact. Let me get that little Post-it note out of there. It's a distraction. There's an excellent naval training film that shows that and recommends this training of putting the hand flat. This is an extremely bad idea. It turns out that this was one of the mistakes that was being made for many, many years in Morse training, because this puts the hand in a dangerous ergonomic position, and that was unknown to people. It encourages this thing called flexion. It encourages sending by flexing of the wrist, like so. Or it encourages sending with just resting the wrist down on the table. Many people do. And they'll just send either flexing the wrist like so, or by going with their fingers. Now, these work. these techniques work fine. People can send very fast and people can send for a long time. There are many things that can be accomplished using those techniques. Don't get me wrong. But they carry hidden risks of developing carpal tunnel syndrome and other even more severe problems as an ergonomic consequence of this particular motion. It's just a bad idea in general. That's the standard American technique, and that's kind of the way it's taught and has been taught to countless number of peoples. Now, there's another technique called the European technique. The European technique takes a very different approach. The European technique puts the key on the edge of the table, like this one, with the knob hanging off, and one's elbow is now supported by nothing at all. One's elbow is supported by air and by one's shoulder up above it. I'm not touching the chair's arm here. And now the sending is being done I've seen people send in this fashion with the wrist, like so. I've seen an overhand fast technique. I've seen techniques that use a lot of vibration. There's a lot of freedom in technique with this, but it's very often taught with techniques that are not all that different from the techniques that are used in the American technique. The biggest advantage that I can see from this is that it doesn't require anything other than it requires a very small amount of desk space, and it certainly works. The technique that I teach and the technique that I recommend to you, given that we live in a modern age where other things are available, I call the modern American technique. And basically it does involve, again, you start off at least with your arm, with your elbow supported, but now it's supported by the chair arm. And this allows you to, again, put the key on the edge of the desk, anywhere on the edge of the desk, actually within reach, and this provides a stable fulcrum for the elbow. And it doesn't, and with the hand in this position, and this position is called the position of function, by the way. We'll show you some pictures of that. But this, they always say this is, if you break your arm, if you happen to break your arm and they'll set it in this like canted position, which is the relaxed position of the arm, is how it will be set, not like this. It would never be set flat, which is considered an awkward position. It would be set like this. Well, that's the same position from which you want to operate the key. The basic operation of the key goes from there. And there are a number of reasons. There are a number of reasons why that works and the effects that have. And we'll get to those. But right now I want to stick with this particular thing. But as far as the armchair goes, this allows you a lot of freedom in motion, and the advantage of not having the desk under here, especially for anybody with a larger arm, that certainly doesn't affect me very much. I'm a scrawny old guy. But people with larger arms, they won't get interference from the desktop, which allows the arm to move more freely, which allows code to be sent more easily. But most importantly, the advantages of this are to be found in the dynamics of how you're moving the wrist. And for that, I'm going to change to a different camera again. I'm going to go back to the side camera. And we'll take a look at that from a side perspective. When the arm is turned flat like this, and this is an experiment you can do for yourself. If you put your arm flat like this, just hold it flat like you were playing a piano, let's say, and then push down on the top of your hand and pull up and press down, but you're applying pressure down with the other hand down like this. You'll notice that the muscles that are doing the resisting are primarily these forearm muscles. And that's because when your hand is turned like this, these muscles are loaded and prepared to fire. That's kind of like cocking the gun in your body. The loading of a particular muscle gets it ready to be used, and turning the hand horizontally prepares these muscles for use in this motion called flexion, which is the ergonomically unsafe thing that can happen. But so if you press down, you feel that's where it is. Now if you turn your hand this way, like you were shaking hands, and now press down on your hand and pull up, you find that the pressure is now being taken up into here and up into the biceps. Now the biceps is doing the work, not the forearm. In this, when you go like this, the forearm is doing the resisting. When you go like this, it turns it to the biceps. that simple change changes the muscles that are involved in the primary motion from flopping these back and forth to these muscles up here in the arm, and that is much, much, much ergonomically safer. And I promise you that it's very fast in performance. Some of the fastest senders in history have used this technique, and I'm pretty fast myself. I'm a champion caliber sender. So that's the basic action of the position of function, of getting the hand in a position where it's safe to send, and send regularly. Okay, let's go back to the presentation screen now. And another piece of that comes from this piece of equipment. I said before the key doesn't matter, and I kind of mean that. I will say that I think the chair in some ways matters more than the key, because getting yourself in a proper position from which you're able to flex your arm correctly and in a comfortable position is very important. And believe me, the Morse operators of old didn't have beautiful chairs like these available. These images are all from the OSHA site, and these all show acceptable positions. And notice in this one, the one here in the top center, the chair is actually tilted a little bit. The seat cushion is tilted, but the back is fairly upright. And then in this, the one in the bottom right is more square, and then the one in the back is more laid back. These are all ergonomically fine positions. And what these are saying is to get yourself into a position like this, and then if you've got a movable elbow rest, you're in the perfect position to adjust your elbow to the point where it's going to work well with a key located anywhere up in this up in this reach envelope. This allows you great latitude in where you place your keys. And if you remember that picture of where I have my keys, that's the way my keys are all set up. They're kind of all along this arc, and I can reach them anywhere and send perfectly with them. This is a great way to locate your keys. This armchair gives me that latitude to do that. So it's a very important little piece of equipment if you can afford it. If you can't, hey, everything works. But some things work better than others. And that's kind of what we're getting to on this. Another piece of this, and that's an often overlooked piece of it, is key stability. Is an important thing. And the picture here is of this junk called Quakehold, which is not junk at all. It's just a type of stuff called museum putty that you can buy on Amazon. And it makes a huge difference in stopping a key from walking around on the table on you. And there are many others. It is a thing called museum putty. You can just look up museum putty and you will find many. Quakehold is the one that I use. And I've not used the others, so I can't attest to them, but hey, they're basically the same thing. Point being, whoops, let's go back to this little guy again, this little Morse key. And this little Morse key you can compare this with a J38 in some ways. One of the nice things about the little Morse key is the fact that the foot here, the attachment of it, is underneath the pressure center of the knob. And because of that, when you press down, it doesn't make it do a wheelie. If it didn't have that, and you pressed down it with lever, and a J38 will do that. If you have a J38 that's not attached, and you press down, you get a wheelie out of it. And you don't want that. That's why a lot of people reverse the plastic base on the bottom of a J38 to get that longer lip to stop it from wheeling. Well, this little Morse key, they were thoughtful enough to build that in. But then when you get just a little bit of the Quakehold on there, it'll come down onto a desk like this and holds really nicely, and it really makes the key work. It makes a very big difference in the operability of a key to have it stably mounted to the table and desk, so that you do not have to think about, your brain is not having to adjust for, oh, is the key moving a little bit as it's shifting along. Just as your elbow likes having a fixed pivot as a fulcrum, so too the points in a key are fixed pivot points in a fulcrum. And it's part of a moving system. So ideally, these are fixed fulcrum points, just as your elbow is, and the things in the middle are the springs that are making this whole vibratory system function. So it sounds unimportant, but little things matter. It's the sum. Your fist is the sum of all the little things, and that I think is very worth remembering. And it's really how not to hold the key. Overall, it's not how you hold the key, it's how you move it. That's kind of the bottom line. How you move it is much more important than how you hold it, but really not holding the key is the secret. Again, if we go back to this little fella here, let's go back to this J38 and put this here. This is the classic button knob that you see on so many keys that are out there. This has been around, well, since this was on Bale's key. Bale's key had a button knob. It was why they called it a key is that it was designed after keys on organs and on pianos back in the day when this was invented. That's why they're called keys. And they had little button knobs like this, and they went forward and they had little button knobs like this because that's what we do. That was their reason for having them. But when they talk about holding it, you're typically shown a 3-point grab. My index finger is a little bit shorter than most people, so it doesn't quite come up the way most people's do, but they show you grabbing over the top and this 3-point grab here. And in the Navy training film and the Army training film that's still around, they actually show a picture of picking the key up and holding it between. They say how tightly should be holding it. They say you should be able to pick the key up like this and hold it. That this would be approximately, how tight you're holding it, because you're holding onto it. Well, there's another ergonomic problem you do that, because as soon as you start grasping together like this, what you do is you start, let me go up and away a little bit. As soon as you start doing that, you are closing down the carpal tunnel, and you are inviting carpal tunnel problems. Just the fact of closing your fingers together closes the area in the carpal tunnel. That is a piece of the problem that makes carpal tunnel problems come. So grasping things in general, again, an ergonomic no-no in ergonomic design of equipment, yet all of our keys, millions of keys, were designed that way, and that is the way it is. Well, that's not quite the way it is. It turns out that when this key was first invented or really developed back in the 1860s and 1870s, the fellow who developed this grip originally said that he had his hand turned like he was holding a pen. And he likened it to holding a pen, and later on, around 1900, people turned it. And it's not exactly clear why they did that, but it's very clear that it was an ergonomic mistake, because it led to these ergonomic problems. But this was the original grip, was a turned grip. And very often, the fourth finger is under the back of the knob, like so. So you're not quite needing to grip onto it as much, because you're getting an up and down support between these two fingers. Let's go from the side again and see if we can take a look at that from the side. These fingers here, this finger is coming under the lip, and this is over the lip, and so there's a support. I don't have to hold it as much this way. And I'm not taking these fingers and folding them back under my hand. I'm taking these fingers and I'm letting them relax and letting them be part of the action. That works just fine. People always say you'll figure out what's going to work for you, and that's part of what you have to make work for a straight key to work out. But these keys are a little bit different. But in any event, it's not how you hold the key. It's the ergonomics of grasping have to be considered. And in this position of function, when you use this Navy-style key, which is the other style of key knob that you see here on the desk, let me get this little fellow out of the way. This Navy knob style is what I prefer. And it's what I do generally prefer and what I recommend to everyone. A navy knob is a guard to protect your keys. They were invented back around the turn of the century to protect people's fingers from the high currents that were present in keys back in the day. Some of the guards were this big around because if you touched the key, you could get yourself a possibly life-threatening shock out of the deal, which is not such a deal. But this is called the guard, and this mushroom knob up here, you don't hold the mushroom knob. You can. I mean, you can hold things any way you want to. It is a free world in that regard. But you don't hold the knob. What you do instead is you move your hand down and you envelop the knob where you're coming around it, like so. And if you look at it from the top, perhaps it's a little more clear to look at it this way, coming down. But you're going around the knob so that you're able to control the key completely without grabbing onto it at all. These were originally invented pretty much for flyers who had to wear gloves, flyers and tank guys and folks like that who had to wear gloves in airplanes and such that were unheated in winter, and so they needed a knob they could literally grab onto, and it was very convenient for that. But it also turns out then that just a slight variation of that grabbing allows this, that they also work pretty well when you're not wearing gloves. And they're very popular in some circles, and certainly with me. It's one of the reasons why I like this little CW Morse key, because it is available with a nice little navy knob on it. Works quite well. I said very nice key, certainly suitable and adequate for, frankly, a user at any level. But for $39, hard to beat. It's I'm not part of them. I'm not plugging them for any reason other than the fact that I have it. I like it. It passes my tests of being able to use it freely and not worry about it. I usually keep this in my go bag. This little key is usually in my go bag, and these two keys are what sits on my desk most of the time. All right. Okay. Well, I started talking about how the arm works and this position of function. And I mentioned here this notion of the baby rattle and casting and the karate chop and sending code without a key. And this really gets back into that same thing of the key is not important, but how you move is what's important. How you're moving the key works. And this goes back to being a baby, which is an early part of our stages of development. Baby was, as we were kids, we shake a rattle. And that position of holding a rattle and going da 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 back and forth with a rattle and shaking it to make noise, that is a really, really basic movement that is very fundamental to how code is done. And by the way, it's not with the hand flat. It's with the hand in the position of function is how you do that. That's also how you cast if you're fishing. That's also how you cast fishing. You're casting this way. You're not casting this way, flat. And I call it also the karate chop, that if you're karate chopping something, you're coming down and you're knocking something. And this is probably one of the first demonstrations that you can do for yourself of where and how code works. I've got my hand. I said, this is what I was talking about, the karate chop, the idea that you can karate chop repetitively up and down, making that up and down motion, and that repetitive motion, that's what you're doing to make Morse code. That's how Morse code works, is through these repetitive motions. And that's what we're exploring here, is the ability to do that. And that motion is that motion that you're learning to tame and control, and learning to control the key. These are just some formal pictures of position of function. The first one on the top is a picture from an ergonomics site where they're talking about designing equipment for use in the hand. The bottom left is a picture from a manufacturer of mice who has this instrumented arm, and they're measuring how the arm is reacting, and this is the ergonomic mouse that they're designing, how to put you in ergonomic function. And this picture over on the right is a hand of a real Morse master. This is a fellow sending code at 27 words a minute. And he's going along like an absolute buzzsaw. But notice the similarity in hand positions to the positions that I've been showing you. He is sending in the position of function his arm, and he's in European style, by the way. His key is at the edge, and his arm, his elbow is definitely not on the table. It's European with position of function sending pretty much the way I described. Okay, the next topic that the beginner always wants to know is, okay, well, I've got the key and I need to adjust my key. And this is one that bothers people. People put a lot of effort and thought into the adjustment of their keys, and I again kind of take a viewpoint saying, you know, it's not really rocket science. We've been reaching out our hands and grabbing onto things and shaking them around and moving them for an awfully long time. This is not completely new to you. And we were showing before baby shakes a rattle, and we were showing, you know, like karate chop on the tabletop and all that. And you have this key out here, and you need to learn to move it. And you need to learn how it feels. So rather than me saying, I want you to put a 10-pound weight on here, and I want a gap of 1 inch on these contacts so that it's moving, things are moving these great distances, I don't want you to do that at all. I think that that is not doing you a service, nor do I want to say, here's a specific number so that you sweat and say, oh, am I close to the number and I'm not getting the numbers right. I don't want to do that because that's not how it works. I think the best way to do it is to have it be a little more fun than that, and to be a little more exploratory than that. And for that, we can go back to, I think, the side presentation of the key will give us a good look at what's going on. If we take a look at this one, the adjustments on the key that you need to worry yourself about, there are these things called trunnion adjustments, which just adjust the bearings so that the bearings for this pivot are not binding. And I'm not going to teach you how to adjust those bearings at this point in time. You can find that out. But basically what I recommend is to put the settings. Let's say the pressure. There's one here that affects the pressure, how hard I have to press to get the knob to go up and down. And then there's another one back here that adjusts how far I have to press the knob to get it to move up and down. Those are the two adjustments you have on it. So what I've got this set for is what I call stupid. These are stupid big. Sure, I can still send code on it. I can send code on anything. I keep saying that. I can send code on car horns. It's not going to stop me because it's coming from my brain, remember? It's coming out of my brain. But that doesn't mean I want to sit and go like that all day long with settings that big. They're much bigger than they need to be, and I think it's self-evident. And you need to kind of feel it yourself and feel that it's too big, and then close it down. Close it down and lighten it up, and close it down and lighten it up, and close it down and lighten it up, until you find a point to where you say, that doesn't feel too stupid. And you know, you're not trying to make it the tightest in the world. You're not trying to prove how small you can make it. You're just trying to find settings where you can do this back and forth, rocking up and down, with settings that sort of make sense to you right now. And that's what that's where you're going to start from, is something that feels good to your arm, doing a repetitive up and down motion like that, because that's the basic of your arm. And if you feel at any time during the course of these experiments, if you find that that's too hard, change it. Maybe change it just for the sake of changing it to see what it feels like later on. But start with something that just feels right, and learn to feel. Learn to understand what you're feeling and experience it. That's the important takeaway from this. Okay? And there are a couple of other things we're going to find out about how the key is working here as we go. Back to the presentation screen. Drill number 1, that's key cycling up and down. That's the first drill you're ever going to do, is just regular, repetitive motion of your key moving up and down. This is your little karate chop. Dot, dot, dot. If you can move your hand up and down regularly and tap it on the table, if you can tap your finger on the table, like that. Whoops, get it backward and see it a little bit. If you can tap your finger like that on the table, You see, that's the start of it. That's the start of making Morse code, is the ability to make regular taps like that, and then instead of making the taps on the table, move your hand over and do like that. The difference is I'm not going tap, 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 tap like this. My whole arm is vibrating up and down. You see, it's on the fulcrum here, and it's vibrating up and down. But anyway, so this side motion, this side regular motion is the first drill. And you're doing it at a setting that you set for the key, that you think just feels okay for now. And you're going to go for it. You're going to work from there. Back in the presentation, there's a couple of points about keying that I'd like to make. One is that the up is just as important as the down. There is a tendency when people are operating a Morse key to press the key down and then think that the key's spring is pushing it back up again. And so they wait for it to come back up and then sort of press it down again and release it, and press it down and release it, and press it down and release it. That's not the way you do it. What you're doing is you're pressing down and you're pulling up, actually, and you're carrying it back up and pressing down and up and down and up and down and up, and the up is just as important as the down. What people very often, one of the most common mistakes you'll hear is that people won't finish their characters. They'll send a dit half-heartedly or a da half-heartedly. Literally, they just don't finish them because they're not finishing the character and recognizing that the key always starts, everything starts with the key up. And it's a down and an up. That's a key cycle, up and down, a key cycle, down and up. The up is just as important as the down. And so practicing that regular up and down motion, this is why you can practice that with zero force. I can set it so here, if I drop the key, if I don't hold it up, the key goes down. You see, it doesn't really change it for me. I'm an expert. I can send code perfectly with zero force on the key because I'm not letting the key control the arm. The key isn't pushing itself open. I'm making sure that that key is open. I'm only really setting this tension enough because it's like adjusting a trampoline. After a while, you're getting to where you're jumping up and down on this little trampoline, and it helps you bounce up and down if you have a nice setting on it. But the key is not lifting the hand, no more than the trampoline is lifting. You know, you're also pushing. It's a group effort. The two are working together. And I think that's a very important consideration to remember, is that the up is just as important as the down, and these are deliberate cycles. You don't just let it happen. You don't just let the character end because the key is pushing it open. You end the character. The characters have to end very specifically. And we'll show you some drills for that. We're getting there. All right? So let's look at the next piece of this. And for the next piece, we are going to take a look at the source of these things. And that is that it comes from Morse being an alphabet of rhythms. And these up and down rhythms that you've been listening to, this is like a graph of those rhythms where they're lined up with something called the dit train. The dit train is an imaginary, constant, never-ending cycle of dits going on. And everything that you do when you're sending Morse is kind of in the context of this dit train, and everything somebody else is doing when they're sending it to you. This is the time track. This is the way we coordinate what we're doing back and forth, like in dancing or in music. We coordinate against this dit train. And we go from the dit train into an understanding of exactly how dits and das work. And you can take a look at this graph now, and you can see that in here, here's a single dit being represented. And take a look at this graph for just a second. Notice that the key, this graph represents this line, this squiggly line represents the key moving up and down, except that it gets to the center here and the key actually stops moving, right? Because this is where the contacts are made. but the momentum of the hand keeps going, and maybe the arm of the key bends a little bit, and it all bounces back up from that trampoline and goes all the way back up to the start again, and then comes back down, and this is the vibration of the key. That's called a key cycle, okay? And each dit, you make one key cycle, down, up. Key cycle makes a perfect dit. And two key cycles make a perfect dot. That's the biggest trick in Morse, and that's the thing that most of the systems don't teach, is that, most systems will be teaching you in terms of units. They'll say that a dit represents 1 unit, and there's 1 unit. Notice over here that this space here between that and the dot, there's 1 that's the same as a dit size, so there's 1 unit between the it and the next character. And this dot is 3 units long, because 1, 2, 3 units, and then there's another unit until the next one, and then 3 units long. And this is that 3-to-1 ratio that you'll hear people talking about. But in the real world, what it is that here is a single key cycle makes the dit. And then you come down and key cycle 1, hold it up, makes 2 key cycles, makes, if you have 2 perfect key cycles and your timing is a 2-to-1 frequency ratio, that makes perfect 3-to-1 signals. It's magic. 2-to-1 key cycle ratios make perfect 3-to-1 signals. So if you learn how to do regular keying and regular cyclic keying, you'll always have a perfect 3-to-1 ratio, and you'll never have to worry about it again. It's one of the most important pieces that goes into understanding these things. And there are other rules that are set up about that. All the other things that are rules about this is how Morse code works. It all works in terms of these key cycles. It's kind of the most important thing. We get back and we once again say that in Morse the letters and numbers are 2-to-1 rhythm sets in the context of that beat that's going on. These show the context. These are double frequency, 2 rhythms against 1. This is the Morse alphabet, by the way. They're not laid out ABC. They're laid out here actually in terms of how many key cycles make up the letters, which is not a way we usually look at things. But in terms of how long it takes to make them, it's organized by key cycles. This is the alphabet of these rhythm sets that you're going to be learning. These are the rhythm sets, each of which is distinct. It's a lot easier than it sounds. Don't worry about it. We'll be making it easier as we go along, because the next topic we're going to touch on is that how babies learn is really important. And babies develop their motor skills very early, and remember that they babble before they make correct sounds. Babies are going blah, 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 and then they get into mama, mama, da, 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 with mommy and daddy, mimicking back and forth, learning more correct sounds, and then they put them together and assemble them into words as a process. And this really does imply that this is the way that Morse code should be taught, and that is that you should be practicing learning to make the correct sounds of Morse and learning their patterns and rhythms before you start worrying about what they mean. That's the essence of keying, is you should learn a little bit of keymanship. You should learn how to operate the key and make the correct sounds, the correct rhythms, before you worry about meaning. Let meaning come next. Because that's the way babies did it. And it seems to work very well for an awful lot of people who are learning to operate keys. And code talking is the kind of the key that's going to open up the world of Morse code to you most easily. And that is because you already know how to use your voice to make regular sounds. You've spent a lifetime learning how to use your voice. You can go da 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 da. You can make those rhythms very easily with your voice, and that's code talking. And then you can take that code talking and connect it to the key. Da, 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 da. You can connect the two together and kind of teach yourself to use the key by mimicking your own voice correctly, making the correct rhythms of code. You get that? You're going to learn to talk the rhythms first. And the more accurately you can talk the rhythms, the more accurately you're going to be able to send them. And frankly, the more accurately and easily you're going to be able to copy them, because the two, it's like it's a wheel chasing itself. Copying and sending are two sides of the same coin. You strengthen one, you strengthen the other, even though they improve at different rates. The rates at which you will improve in those various skills changes. They approach each other in the middle. So that's very important to remember that code talking is what you're going to be doing it, and you're going to couple that with regular oscillatory motion. The baby can shake a key. Da 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 da. Those are the things that babies learn. They learn to make noises, regular noises, and they learn to mimic them, and they learn to tie them into motions. And those are the key things that the key skills that you're going to harness in order to send Morse code. That will make it a heck of a lot easier. That opens the door. And this is one of the last pieces that's technical here, so to speak, and that is that these Morse rhythms that we've been taking a look at are double time. And let me explain what that means. To go back, this shows again the dit train. Here is this regular thing that's going on, and here is a dit in single, and here is a two keystrokes making a da and making a dit. But double time is what you learned if you ever learned to march. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That doubling of a time base is kind of hardwired into us. We're really, really, really good at it. And that doubling of time base is the basis of good Morse code, because that's how you get long and simple keystrokes, to where you time with your hand, for example, sending 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you make perfect Morse code, is just by teaching yourself to double, and by training your hand to go in those doubles. Listen to it as code. Code is doubling. All of these different rhythms are either single or doubled key cycles. And that, like this one, da. All I'm doing to make the longs and the shorts is having that doubling of rhythm go on in my head. It works so easily. So da, 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 dit, 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 da, and that works at any speed. If you slow it down, da, 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 dit, 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 da, da, dit, 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 da, dit, da, just slowing it down, da, da, dit, da, 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 or you see, the speed changes, but the rhythms are the same. You're also going to find those rhythms. One of the reasons that people say it's easier to send and easier to copy actually at higher speeds is that the rhythms are more recognizable at higher speeds. The rhythms become more self-evident. And the first real drill that you have is just dits. And that's the first drill that I want you to work on. And here we've got the dits are represented by lowercase d's, and you'll find them as uppercase d's because it's easy to see them when they're written out that way. You can read this as a tabulature to see what you're supposed to be sending. And this top one is representing continuous dits, and you be pronounced the way it is shown over here under pronunciation. And that's it's constant, like a machine gun is the way the ARRL called it. That constant, and that's the very first drill that you need to do, is constant dits. That's been true, that's been the first drill since in the 1850s, when Morse, the guys who learned Morse initially, learned it. They learned it by doing these very same drills. So I didn't invent this stuff, I'm just repeating it back to you. This is old technology that still works, so it's but let me show you this. Here's a single dit, okay? Dit, dit, Notice the difference, and here's an important thing, the difference in pronunciation between multiple dits. All the dits leading up are kind of incomplete. They're not dit, 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 dit. They don't sound like that. They don't sound dit, 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 dit. They sound dit, 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 like they're running into each other. Dit, 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 dit. They're running into each other. The last dit is always, however, dit. It's very specific and explicit that you actually pronounce it. Now, that may sound like a funny thing at this point, but I promise you that's what it really comes down to. Let's take a look at a double dit. Dit, 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 dit. You hear the end of it. It's really funny the way it ends like that. Oh, look at this one. This one needs editing down to be not to be written right. But if you go down to 3, compare the difference. Some people say it's like skipping. Some people say 3 is like a horse running. It is. Or a horse galloping is 4. It gets harder, by the way, as you throw in more of them, trying to do them at speed. It gets more difficult to control your arm because these are fast enough that there's complexity to it. You can practice them slower. But listen to the differences. Experience. I want you to experience these rhythms. Play it until you're bored. If you start getting bored playing it, that means your mind, it's kind of wearing itself into your brain. But compare that with versus this is your first set of drills that you follow through, is to do these drills and to practice sending different dit patterns. Just practicing. That's all you're doing, is sending some dit patterns. Do each of them, let's say, 50 times. Each of the dit patterns 50 times. And send at least a couple of hundred dits continuous. I want you to see what those look like. And the next drills you're going to do, I think you can probably guess what those are going to be. They're going to be das. Da. Da. Das always finish. Das are never truncated. And that's another classic mistake people make in sending when we're listening to sending. They go instead da, da, da. I can't, it's hard to do. It's hard to, I'm having a hard time actually demoing the error because I don't know how to make the error. I know how to do it right. But basically not completing, having the second da or the last da turn into more like a dit than a da. Da. They'll think that they're not definite enough. Da, da. Each one is identical to the other. So even if you're doing them permanently, if you're doing just a row, da 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 da, or slower, da 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 da. Slower. Okay? Now we're going to practice some dits and das, and this is where it gets interesting. Watch this. If I send, here's a pattern. Da-da, 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 da-da. Now I'll play them continuous. Listen to these going continuous with a letter gap between them. Notice if I start with a da and end with a dit. The end letter is a dit. Da dit, da dit, dit, dit. And the next one down is 3 dits and a da. Di-di-di-da, di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-di-da, di-di-di-da, di-di-di-da. There's no completion of those dits. They're machine gunning together. But if I send da did a dit, it ends on a dit. Sending that final da fully and sending a final dit fully are the two most common mistakes I hear in people sending, in that they don't actually complete them. And things start sounding uneven because things aren't just flowing easily on that regular beat. Da, 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 that's your drill. That's your basic drill. Now I'm going to give you some homework to do too. And the first piece of homework is that I want you to practice a musical piece. And that can be any musical piece. I want you to find some musical piece playing on the radio or something that you can play in your head that you don't mind tapping out the rhythm to. Again, we're not looking for meaning here. We're looking for you just tapping out rhythm with another piece. William Tell Overture is a really good one. I want you to do that. I want you to find a piece of music, some piece of music that you like, and tap along with it and start tapping to it. And I want you to become sensitive to rhythm and beats in the world around you. I want you to start paying attention to all the things and all the music. You're going to hear it a lot in music. If you watch TV at all and listen to theme songs, you'll hear boom, 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 boom. You'll hear these rhythms that represent Morse. These double-time rhythms are very, very common in music. They're a real basic piece of music. So you're going to start hearing them everywhere. And I want you to start practicing hearing them and making them with your little noisemaker called a key. Don't worry about meaning for now. And I want you to see, say, and play. I want you, if you see the tablature, or say it and play it. Da 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 da. Just out of my head. I'm not reading it anywhere. I'm just doing dits and das almost randomly. Just playing around with the key. That's what I want you to do, is to familiarize yourself with the operation of the key to where you can do it smoothly. Then, next, on top of this, you're now ready to build an alphabet and start learning those alphabetic rhythms. So, I think that pretty well sums up what I have as the basic message set for this. I do want to add in one little thing and say there's something for extra credit if people want extra credit behind homework, and that is you can practice your primary linguistic skills, because these are other things that come up all the time, and that is the ability to parse words into spoken letters, spelling, ta-da! You have to be able to spell the vocabulary you're going to use. You have to be able to listen to spoken letters, S-P-O-K-E-N-L-E-T-T-E-R-S-I-N-T-O-W-O-R-D-S. You need to be able to hear spoken letters like that and put them together into words and fuse them together. That's head copy. When you hear somebody talking out the letters, you can practice head copy and all that right now. You're just practicing it in one of those other two ABCs or alphabets that you already know. And then as you learn the Morse alphabet, you're going to move the Morse alphabet over and to do it in parallel with that. And that's the route that I recommend to everyone. Okay then. So